Welcome, everyone, to the Tesla Beat podcast number 57. How's it going, everyone?
Excellent.
Just fine.
Good.
Alexandra, the biggest question is, has your life kind of come back together now? Is it back to normal?
It is. And my day job is taking over. It's funny because I think my employees are like, oh, she's back.
Oh,
and
no.
I am back. I am back. So yes, it's coming back together. I have next week a big appointment at USCIS for my citizenship test. So
Congratulations.
Wait. It's not done yet. Don't jinx it.
You're going to pass that test. Give me a break.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm super nervous. I always am before I put myself. I got my flashcards. I'm going through the videos and all that. So I hope that goes well. And I think after that, I'll finally relax, and then I'll come party at the X Takeover at the end of the month.
If they question your patriotism, tell them to contact Elon.
Yeah, I did it. I tell them, okay, look, do that.
If you know anything like financials like you do with and investing like you do with Tesla, this test is going to be, you could do this probably not even in your sleep. Like,
well, there are a couple of strange questions, right? So under the Constitution, what is one power of the federal government? I mean, of course you know it, but it's like nailing it. But it's okay. I'm going through these cards. I'm putting myself into it. It's gonna be okay. I still got a couple of days to get it. And they call me in at 6:50 in the morning. And I mean, you know, because I always complain that this show is on at 8 o'clock. What a morning person I am. So I don't want to know how I'm going to look at 6:50 in the morning. But and this is San Fernando Valley. So from Santa Barbara, with morning traffic, it would be much more than an hour. So I've decided we're going to stay at the hotel in there overnight. Just be cautious, because the last thing I would need is some traffic jam and not being able to get
Exactly.
We'll see. I'll keep you updated next week how it went.
I know you're going to do well, so I feel like I don't even need to wish you any luck, but I'm glad that this is all coming to a head. But glad things are slowing down a little bit for you. I feel like it's been a minute since we've seen 200.
Happy birthday, Elon. Happy birthday.
Yeah. Elon, if you're watching, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for all you've done. Actually, funny enough, Alexandra, you literally reminded me of that. Even though I did post last night, I totally forgot. But yeah, Elon, happy birthday. Glad the comp plan worked out. Obviously still a lot of work ahead, but glad we were all able to get that through. Yeah, I feel like it's the first time in 200 in a minute. If you see, I think, what is that spike in maybe like late April, early May, it was hit 200. But it feels like it's been a minute since it's been 200. So I think there was about a 3% spike today. So nice to see it too in front of the Tesla stock. But again, it was about 182 last week. All right, so Alexandra, your work is never done. So I thought, you could just, obviously this past week, I think you posted something, a quick update on the progress on the case. And then I know there was a Reuters article that came out, and it seemed like, again, it just depends on who you talk to, where it feels like, you're taking 15 steps forward, but, they made a pretty bold statement as far as like, Tesla just making it very clear that this has pretty much been won. But what's the latest from your post on the case? And
I'll try to sum it up, because I could talk about it for hours, but let me just do it quickly. So the case had this preliminary judgment end of January, right? That we know, where does the richest man in the world deserve more money, whatever, or this pay package. So she went on and on for 100 pages on that. Then came all the events that we've talked about, including the shareholder meeting. After the shareholder meeting, Tesla wrote an opposition saying, look, we now have a new element, and we want this to be reconsidered. We can't just keep January status and run into a judgment because there's something major that happened in the meantime. Please consider that. Please give us hearings on the shareholder vote, and please let us do a long version of a brief to really include all the information that's necessary to explain that. That is going to happen today. So the good news is that yesterday she accepted that there are additional briefings on the matter of the shareholder vote, and that they can submit this today, 14,000 words. So I'm sure Tesla's worked on it for a long time. So the short span between yesterday and today is actually just normal, because Tesla actually proposed this date. Tesla last week said we would be ready on this Friday, June 28th, to submit the brief. So we'll have that today. At the same time, plaintiffs' attorneys, who are starting to sweat, I hope really sweat, have altered a little bit the way they want to be paid. So remember, they had this outrageous claim a couple of long weeks ago saying we want shares, 29 million shares, equivalent of about $5 to $6 billion, because we saved all this money to Tesla. They saved nothing, but be it. So now they're saying, okay, well, if the judge can't agree to give us shares, we want cash, and we want cash in the amount of $1.44 billion, because that equates to $76,500 an hour. And yes, while this would be the highest ever paid hourly rate to a winning attorney in a U.S. case, we deserve that. Blah blah blah. I mean, I can go into details to it. It's disgusting how they reason to that. But anyway, that's their latest claim. At the same time, both Tesla, Amy, and also two shareholders from Florida filed oppositions. CalPERS joined Amy's opposition to these fees, and they all argue the maximum they should ever get is, there are different ways of doing it, between 10 and 50 million. Okay, so we have two subjects on the table. How much will the plaintiff's attorneys be paid? And that is still scheduled for July 8th. And now, new coming to the same case, the consideration of whether we should consider this stockholder compensation vote and the ratification of it. And there are diverging opinions in the Tesla world. Warren, who is a lawyer, I obviously fully respect his view, but also some other lawyers that are with me on the other side. So Warren thinks the fact that she's dissociating the two dates, that she maintains the 7th of July for the plaintiff's attorney's fees and gives us a later date. I mean, now the briefs are all filed, but the hearing on the shareholder vote is going to be late July, beginning of August, means that she won't consider that. She just fakes that she gives us some time to discuss it. I don't think so. I think she wanted to maintain that schedule for the plaintiff's attorney's fees that have been set in March. Everybody actually had agreed to that in March, including Tesla. So I think she just wants to get that part over. That doesn't mean she's going to rule on that. It's just the hearing, the final hearing, and then that subject is at least closed, except for her making a judgment on it. And then we're going to have a couple of weeks later the shareholder vote ratification. Is it significant or not? Should it be considered or not? And then afterwards, there will be a final hearing. So no, this is not over yet. And it could still be as devastatingly wrong as it was in January, and she just now allocates whatever sum she thinks to the plaintiff's attorney. Then we'll have to go into appeal. But Tesla made a bold move. That's the Reuters article. And it's absolutely normal to do this. So it made me giggle and smile, but it's absolutely normal procedure to do this. So Tesla filed with her, when they explained that they want to be heard now on the shareholder vote, already a preliminary text of a possible judgment, she could say. And in that possible judgment, they obviously would have said that the defendant was right, and that's that the situation is over. Now, people were like, "Oh, they're so arrogant. They are putting words already in her mouth." No. This is absolutely normal procedure, and so I'm sure the plaintiff's attorney are also going to suggest what they would write as a final judgment. And this is not something that's going to piss off the judge or whatever else I've heard on that. It's just completely normal. And so from there on, we'll just have to wait. Today is going to be a big date. I expect, I don't know how many pages, 14,000 words are, but lots of pages of how Tesla's attorneys are going to argue for the consideration of the shareholder vote. And then that's it. So again, if the judgment is still as ridiculous as it looked in January, then we can go into appeal. Once we have end of August, beginning of September, her final judgment. But she may consider now suddenly that shareholders has an opinion and did something. And so I hope there's still a little hope that the story could be over sooner than later, but it will be over at one point.
Would you say, like, how much of this is just, just the due process? Like, I guess, like, so obviously there was a resounding yes from the Elon Musk comp plan vote this past, 2 weeks ago. So is that like, at this point, it's just a matter of just getting through these, small legalities?
It's not a one deal. I mean, it's not like we're 100% sure it will be ratified. We did everything we could to get it to that path, and we're giving now strong arguments to Tesla's lawyers. But in the end, this is still a pending case. I do believe the Delaware state is very upset with this judge. They've made it clearly known in a parliamentary session in Delaware, which was on a completely different legislation, but one that was contentious because it actually gave corporations and board of directors more power. And they used that because in that case, completely independent from Tesla, Judge McCormick and her vice chancellor openly commented on ongoing legislation, which is very unusual for judges. You just don't do that. That's not your role. Your role is, I'm learning my flashcards. Your role is to apply the law. It is to revise the law, but it's not to make the law.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought, right? And so she is she gets more and more an image of being an activist. Now you have to know, in Delaware, there is this chancery court. Not in all 50 states you have chancery courts. Chancery courts are business courts, right? In Texas, there is not yet, but they are instating one now. So the fact that Delaware has a business court is obviously linked to the fact that they have so many businesses that are incorporated there. They're not headquartered there, but they're using that as their incorporation state. And so the whole legal side is always dealt with in Delaware, and that's why there are so many cases, and that's why they put up a specific court, which is the Chancery Court. And the Chancery Court has 7 judges, including the head one, which is called a chancellor, and that is ours. That is Kathleen McCormick. So she gets criticized from a former chancellor who was a chancellor, I think if I remember right, for about 21 years. And he publicly, in that Senate hearing that was transmitted everywhere where you wanted to see it, called her out for being activist, but also called her out for 2 recent rulings, including, I think, the Twitter one, if you interpret it right, where you just have the feeling that her reputation is taking a toll, and they understand that this is really a major issue now for Delaware State, and they need to pull this back into the right path so that people are continuing to incorporate there, because that is their main business in this state, and don't go to other states, because there are 49 other states, and some of them, like Florida or Texas or Nevada, are very attractive states as well. So there's this is a competitive environment, and while Delaware had a long time lead, she is single-handedly making it more difficult. And I do believe that between end of January and now, she got a lot of heat. She seems to also have, I hear that from a different corner, I don't know whether that's true, political ambitions. If you want to run for senator in Delaware, you have to, in the Democratic Party, you have to submit your application before August 8th. Now, funnily enough, everything that's supposed to happen is going to happen before August 8th in our case. So that could be one. Other people talk that she actually wants to go back to practice law that she did before, obviously before she became the chancellor. So there seem to be different interests at play, and again, her judgment is not the end of it. We can then go to the Supreme Court of Delaware, and I think, given the attention this court has, given the lawyers of Amy, I think there's also a possibility that we may end up at the federal Supreme Court. So, there are more steps to come. Now, does she want to be known for this crap? Who knows? I mean, it's obviously my idea of it is not very positive, but maybe she thinks it's very positive and then she goes through with it. Or would she rather dial down her profile and come to a amicable solution now? Who knows? I don't, but watching every day. It's gonna be either 3-4 months with a lot of action. Well, July, August now, or it's gonna be another 18 months of lots of action in this case.
Yeah, it just it seems so it seems like there's still obviously a lot more work to be done. But yeah, I mean, I would assume, especially after this, in my opinion, after the after the shareholders revoted 2018 and it was such a loud, resounding yes, and they're moving out of Delaware. I'm just surprised that she's not getting. I mean, she's probably receiving a lot of pressure right now, but she should be receiving even more pressure. Like, hey, we need to just get, kind of wrap this up. But at the end of the day, it's, people are still waiting for this fallout to complete. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a genocide of companies that leave Delaware now. There's going to become a new state or a new sheriff in town that everyone's going to go to because they don't have to deal with crap like this.
I agree, and that's why that the Texas vote was so important. I mean, you remember how often I told you it's very unlikely it passes. It passed with 63%, so it didn't just pass with a small margin. It's small. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the results of the fund management companies that are going to be published end of August when they have to file with the SEC how they vote in proxy votes all over, but obviously also including Tesla. So there we will know how they voted. And there are a couple of things I want to know. I want to know who switched between 2018 and 2024, who voted no on the compensation package, but also obviously who voted for Texas, because I want to see whether those that are themselves headquartered in Delaware are looking at this thinking, come on, Tesla, do the dirty job, get yourself out of this mess, and then we'll follow your example. So this is going to be a very interesting analysis of how all these people with lots of shares voted, and it's actually very political. It's incredible how Elon's companies always get dragged in. I have the feeling he tries to stay out. I mean, other than his persona, but the companies try to stay out of politics, and they get dragged into it yet again.
For sure. Yeah, it's just been a whirlwind. A lot of extra noise. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? It's like, the company's been going through several adjustments this year. Big ones with the auto EV market changing, along with just a lot of other things. And it feels like it's all been overlooked by just one man's comp plan, and not just one man, but obviously one of the founders and one of the most influential people of our age, and obviously for this company too. So, all right, so we know FSD is back. This was asked for during the shareholder meeting, so I believe this was going to end in Q3, August 31st. So, I did the FSD transfer when I got my new Model X. So I transferred it from my old Model X. So definitely, I think this is a huge lever, especially as we're getting ready for 8.8 and the Robotaxi. It's definitely something to consider. And a lot of, again, the Model 3 and the new Model 3 is such an amazing vehicle. So if you're in the market for a Tesla, feel free to this may be the time to do the transfer, and especially with the tax credit too, if that applies to you.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I mean, I'm not in tech, and so I don't really know, right? But it seems like this should just be like a given. Like the FSD should follow the person and not the vehicle. It just seems like with all the tech advances that Tesla has made, this seems like a really odd one that they're kind of backsliding on. And Elon even mentioned it at the shareholders meeting, how it's difficult for the sales process, but it seems like it shouldn't be, but I guess it is. And then it just seems really weird that people have to beg to keep their FSD when they're trying to buy a new Tesla. Like, these are people who want to stay with the company, want to stay with the brand and move forward with a new purchase. And it's just like, it's kind of weird, but yeah.
The age-old debate.
Yeah.
All right, I'll pass this one to you, Joe.
Yeah, so this was pretty awesome to see that Tesla is just, well, I mean, we know this because we follow the company. Like, their manufacturing abilities are just far and greater than everyone else's. And I really wanted to see what Jeff thought about this, because as we look at more and more companies that are getting into the robot space and into the we got all these automotive players and stuff like that. We know that Tesla can manufacture like greater than anybody else. What do you think about this, Jeff, as seeing how everything's like progressing and going forward?
Yeah, these decisions start well before the first car is produced. These are decisions on how the industrial design of the car from Franz's team. Very early on, the team is thinking about how many components they're going to source. They're thinking about how to reduce complexity. So it starts well before the manufacturing process, and the culture comes from the CEO all the way down. And the culture is around designing for manufacturability and around, almost rewarding, engineering for simplification, weight reduction, things like that. And that culture is, all through his staff and all the way down. And you see it. I've always said that Tesla has, probably a 4 to 6 year lead. It's just on the hardware side of it. On the software and autonomy side, it may even be greater. But on the hardware side, they have that lead. And so now they're working on another set of vehicles between now and the next generation platform, where they're going to probably take another, I would say, significant leg down in COGS. This article calls out a pretty significant difference in COGS. They're looking at input costs, by the way. And there's a couple of different things going on. There's the kind of the bucket of materials you buy, the 10,000 components. And then there's the transformation cost of how those 10,000 components come together into a finished product, and how it gets, just how it actually lands in your garage, to be honest with you. That there's costs all the way kind of to that point. And this is really referring to just the kind of the bill of material cost, but all the decisions they make at the component level also really impact the transformation costs greatly. And in Tesla, they call it this idiot index, or this idiot cost. They're really focused on, the raw materials are it, and how do you reduce that transformation cost from raw materials to finished product. So I think they're going to take another, probably significant, maybe $3,000 to $5,000 reduction in the next generation vehicle. When I say that, I'm talking about the one before the new platform, that call it these vehicles that Elon referred to on the earnings call. I think they'll take another significant leg down, and then, but that will mostly actually come in module costs. That will come in input costs actually. And I think they'll take another leg down in cost as they work on transformation with the unboxed model back to the transformation cost side. I think they'll take another significant leg down to enable, and this will be the biggest jump, I think, to enable the $25,000 vehicle, maybe plural, multiple vehicles. So it's good to see. It's not new information what was called out in this article. It's kind of, to me, it's reporting. I don't know if this is Business Insider, or I forgot which publication it was, but this is reporting they could have done a couple of years ago and put out. It's interesting to me. The timing's interesting, but yeah, Tesla's got a significant, probably 4 to 6 year lead, and they're maintaining that. By the way, just one more thing: a lot of companies are announcing or showing a $25,000 or $30,000 vehicle, and you really have to look at the announcement, and you have to look at the company, and you have to look at what have they produced, leading up to that. What have been their promises before? And it's not like Tesla also struggles too with schedule and so forth, but and maybe we'll talk about it later. But there's companies that are making $1 million vehicles now, promising a $25,000 vehicle, and you have to look at that and be a little bit, cautious in terms of their ability to do that. That's a progression that has taken Tesla over a decade just to get to this point. And there's so much involved with what Tesla had to do with building out their supply chain and building out their vertical integration and getting trust within the supply base and growing their volumes to get to that. You don't just snap your fingers and make a $25,000 vehicle.
Yeah, I think about that often. How I mean, well, we won't call out anybody by name, but there's a lot of companies that just made these claims of what they're going to do and where they're going to be by 2025, and then like you look over the past year and there's just been a lot of backsliding. Like, no, we can't make that many vehicles, and the industry is like falling behind. We're going to go for it with these vehicles, and I just there's a lot of bad actors when it comes to that sort of thing, and people will say stuff just to like get the attention on them. But then when it comes to like the production, I mean, we seen this like a few years ago, right? Like everybody was claiming that they're going to make a Model Y or something equivalent to it, and then here we are like, oh no, we're going to have 30 vehicles out by 2024 or 2022, and then that didn't happen, and it's just like, man, it's just wild to see that on display, but people don't really recognize it unless like Tesla's mentioned. Like, it's like, man, but these people lie blatantly, and wow.
Yeah, vehicle design is product design of this complexity is very difficult, and there are design decisions made to enable this cost structure. Then the manufacturing of it or getting the mass scale is even more difficult, and doing that profitably. And then what Tesla is doing on the autonomy side, I believe, is even more difficult than that. And so they're different fields, and they're different expertise. Profitable mass scale is a very difficult thing to do, but it is a long game. I think what the viewers should just understand, you don't make a decision in 2023 and say you're going to have something in 2025. It's a long game. You should have been building out, a modular supply chain for many of the different modules in the vehicle, for many years prior. And so that's where you have to look at some of these announcements and say, okay, how are they actually going to do that? Now, for the industry, there is definitely some wind at their back. What's happening with battery pricing, as it's right now, we're in an oversupplied state. By the way, that could flip in a couple of months. But right now we're in an oversupplied state, and you're seeing the cost per kilowatt hour go well below $80 and even $70, depending on the cell type that's chosen and the package type that's chosen. So that is helping companies kind of ease back into the EV game. But there's still everything else in the vehicle that you have to do to get to that cost structure, and that's where they may be struggling. And Tesla's not just standing still; they're working on the next thing.
Definitely. One thing I thought too, especially, I think Sawyer did a good job to put it in perspective. And so please fact check me, because I'm just throwing out kind of a number. So Rimac, they have like the fastest production electric vehicle right now. And I think he made the comment, because they showcased this prototype, this $25,000 prototype. And I think even Farzad had a 10 to 15 minute clip on what this probably will imply for Tesla. Like, simply, like, one big thing would be, it's probably going to be a two-person vehicle, because 90% of all ride shares are two or less. So there's like certain things like that we could probably take to the bank. But I think he said Rimac has only made like 150 vehicles in their history. And I think, as you said, right, I mean, it's a little bit different with car companies versus like even, AI, right? Everyone's talking about AI, but they're actually probably doing something, versus with these vehicle production, everyone's just showcasing to hype it up and to talk about autonomy, even though they may be years from anything. I mean, we saw that kind of with Fisker that just went bankrupt, and some of these other ones, people can make all the prototypes until their face is a different color. But next thing you know, it's like actually producing it is a completely different story. So I don't know if you had any thoughts specifically on Rimac, but
I
Yeah.
do. I have a couple. I mean, the thing is, they have no factory yet. There is nothing, right? So it just all feels like once we had that picture of Franz in front of the wooden, maybe cybercab, that they copied what they could and made sure that they were there a couple of weeks early with a prototype that I'm even surprised that Mobileye was participating in that. But I mean, they obviously still have some wounds open with Tesla. So it feels to me, and I think the analogy is right, what you said, John. There are many startups in bots, but there are only so few who will make it. And this feels a little bit the same thing. If any of you have ever been in Zagreb, thinking that Zagreb is a good place to start a robotaxi network where you don't have a factory yet, you don't have cars yet, you want to do it in Zagreb and you think it's going to be ready in 2 years, dream again. This is not going to happen this way. I mean, all hail to him that he's trying and that he, had this push to be in the press, and obviously the press is going to make sure that any Tesla killer is given the platform it deserves, haha. But it's if you look a little bit below the surface, it's a nice stunt, but it isn't more.
Yeah, it seemed very. That announcement seemed. I was not pleased when I saw just kind of the approach and how it gets picked up in the media. I mean, Monty Rimac, he's an entrepreneurial. I mean, you read the history. He's entrepreneurial, and you have to give them, like credit for in terms of like being able to show the capability of an EV. But all these is in the same. It was a similar conversation with Lucid talking about he was being critical. The CEO of Lucid being critical of Tesla and saying, look at all the advances in EV and getting the 5 miles per watt hour in Lucid. But all these things have to come together with a product that has to get to market that people are going to be able to buy. And everything you do in the product development world has to pass through a set of filters, and you've got to design for those filters. And they're pretty basic. Like, first off, you have to make a product that people want. Secondly, you have to make it at a quality level that is reliable, that's safe, and so forth. The third thing is you've got to hit a cost structure that's affordable, so people will buy that feature set for the value that you're giving them. And Lucid and other companies are failing at that right now. And then you've got to be able to get the scale. And you've got to be able to pass through all those filters. You have to make a product that can pass through all those filters. And, and some of these companies are just at, stage one or not even one half of one of those filters. But the media will give them credit for saying, well, here, look, they have renderings. It must be something. And that's what's just so disappointing. I wish we had more informed media. That if I were the editor of that, I would look at it. Okay, did they make a product that people want? So it looks like they did. Is it going to have the right quality? Well, we don't know. Is it going to have a cost structure? Well, then I would look at like the company, the scale, like Alexandra said, they don't have a factory. All these different things. These things could be overcome over time, but now you have to look back. Well, how long does it take to actually do these things, and what kind of company and what kind of resources do you need? And I wish things would be picked up and looked at in a proper way. It's not hard to do, but it isn't. And anyway, so but just coming full circle, I think it would be great in 2026 if there were multiple companies making a $25,000 EV, because that would basically put EVs on this, upward hockey stick S curve, and it basically would be the end of ICE.
But that's not going to happen, Jeff, because that's not where they're going to make money. Exactly.
Yeah, I think people refer to us, right, Alexandra? I think people were like, "Oh, you're just haters because you support Tesla and so forth," and it's not that. I'd love to see that, but it's more of what's the credible plan? And I wish there were folks in media and other places that would challenge these companies and would challenge them respectfully in a way so that we would start driving this culture of excellence and really pressure test these claims when they, like, as Joe was saying, when they're put out there, and have these companies really thinking like, hey, you can't really gaslight us. Here's 2 or 3 basic questions to really understand if this is real or not. So anyway, it would be great for EVs if this happened, but I think, right now there's one company that's literally a half a decade ahead, if not longer, in doing this.
Yeah, and that brings me to the point with the Rivian Volkswagen partnership, because that's the same thing. I mean, I wish them well. Honestly, I wish them well. Every EV on the road, I prefer to anything ICE that's on the road. But everything they're doing seems like they're just stuck at a certain moment in time and not enough forward looking. I mean, Volkswagen can do what they want, but they have enough issues on their plate in Europe with their Chinese partnerships that have problems importing into Europe now because they're going to be slapped with huge tariffs. They're discussing between 19 and 37% for cars coming from China, even if they have German or other European partners in those cars. And so now they're looking to improve their software, which is in dire need of improvement. There is no doubt. But it's, first of all, how will it be compatible? I mean, I don't even have a clue how technically it's going to work, but let's just hope that that works in one point or the other. But the next point is that given where the market is today, and given how especially the Chinese have understood that Tesla is the leader to look at, to maybe copy, which is obviously not what we want, but that's what they're going for. I've never heard of any Chinese interested in Rivian software. I mean, I don't know whether you have, but that must have just not been on my radar. And there comes Volkswagen and puts $1 billion on it. And then the third point, it's not yet $1 billion. It's Blume, the replacement of these, which I'm still crying over because I think that would have been a completely other story. But there we are. It's Blume who set up this pretended joint venture, and now it has to go to Volkswagen's board. And Volkswagen's board, if anybody knows, it's a very complicated story. It's mainly families, and this is not a done deal yet. I mean, I hope for them it's going to be a done deal, but we'll hear about this for a couple of weeks and months before this may be a done deal. So anyway, it's just one more example. We just had it on AI, we just had it on the Robotaxi, and now we're having it on software, that people are struggling to find alternatives to Tesla instead of being future oriented enough to just go to Tesla, and they and everybody wants to try to find another solution, and let them do it and hope. I wish them all well, but most probably this money is going to be thrown out, and in the end they will adopt Tesla's solution anyway, because there's just nothing comparable out there.
Yeah, I think that as we watch all these things unfold, I mean, there was the endurance that everybody invested in. There was the freaking, I mean, you've seen people invest in Fisker and even Nikola, like
Lordstown Motors.
My gosh,
that CEO was amazing.
Lordstown Motors, like, I mean, people love to throw money at anything that's not Tesla in hopes that it will be the next Tesla. And I mean, we've seen this time and time again, but it always boils down to one thing: like, they are hoping that Tesla has failure, but because the TAM is so big on all of this, like, Tesla's failure is not required for these companies to succeed. And I made a post about this because Rivian's success is not predicated on the failure of Tesla by any means. They're going to be just fine. Like, just like the Tacoma is just fine against a F-150. You know what I mean? Like, there's room for everybody in this space. And I think a lot of, well, it's mostly the media, I think, that just kind of pits these things against each other. I don't even think RJ Scaringe has a bone in his body that really has anything against Tesla or anything like that. I think a lot of these things are just like media oriented, but still, I mean, Volkswagen has done this, and now we're going to see where it goes. I mean, it could be like how Ford did with Rivian. Like, you throw a few billion at it to make it look like you're doing some great initiative, and then like a year later we see like, oh well, they pulled out because of blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what could happen. But you're right about Volkswagen's board. They are a huge family conglomerate, and they do not like the future of tech things.
No, and especially not in joint ventures where they feel they're not in charge. But I mean, we'll see. Maybe they will approve this one, but I just can't see it yet. And it just looks so set up. I don't know.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I mean, I have to watch my mouth. You all know that my brother is really involved in that side of that. But so I have to watch my mouth. But how it was set up, there was Bloom and there were RG sitting all both dressed in black on these stairs. I mean, I was like, oh, don't do this to us. Don't fool us. It's
cringe.
So cringe, exactly.
Yeah, my opinion is ultimately, like, I personally, like, I'm a fan of Rivian. I love the R1S. I do think that they are taking a piece of the pie that Tesla is missing out on because of how versatile and big their vehicle is. I mean, the R1S, like, especially even in my neighborhood, a lot of these moms who would typically buy these Yukons are now buying these R1Ss because it can seat 7 people or more. And it's got a lot of space, and the range is really good too. And so, and one thing I've noticed is that not everyone needs to buy a Tesla with the latest tech, right? Because some of these other cars, like I drove, I could go off about this. I drove a Hyundai Ioniq 5, and driving a Tesla, I mean, you're taking 15 steps back. But the reality is that, I was talking to other people, the thing has 300 miles of range. It really is it's a step forward from ICE. It's not a Tesla by any means or even close. It still very much feels like an ICE car. But there's just a lot of things that if you step into a Tesla and then step back into that just don't make a lot of sense. But Rivian, like I said, the truck itself, the R1S, the R2, I think they're great vehicles. But again, I think at the end of the day, they still struggle with a lot of the same problems some of these other car manufacturers struggle with. I think Rivian might be the one that could make it. Some of the other ones definitely are going to have a very hard time, especially with how Rivian is also breaking into the, making the delivery vans and some of these other markets. I think, they've found niche markets as well that, Tesla, for example, hasn't found or stepped into yet. But for me, it feels like this is a Band-Aid. This is not this doesn't feel like a Mercedes or Daimler, investing in Tesla, like, to save them type thing. This just feels like they literally need money to continue to run. And I think the $5 billion that's being or the $5 billion that's being invested over the time is really more of just a Band-Aid. So Rivian, I think, hopefully they'll succeed. I don't see a lot of the reasoning behind it. It makes sense for Rivian, like they need this lifeline, right? They had to do it, otherwise, they were going to go under in the next several years, right? But this is if not more immediate, but this for them helps. It probably helps VW, through some of the software and some of the other things that they're doing. But I think it was just a Band-Aid, to be honest. So so it's interesting. The Hyundai Ioniq, it was interesting because there's just like, you realize how far back people are once you step into a Tesla, right? Like there was just things like, you have to turn it on and turn it off. So there was one night I got out of the car and I literally left the car on, and the whole night and I lost like 3%, just because it had literally been on the whole night. And then not only do you have to shut off the car, when you get out of the car, you have to press the lock button. So then there was another whole day where it was just the locks were just open. So I think these companies just have still a long ways to go, but it fits a purpose. It's 300 miles of range. It's affordable. So it's a nice transition vehicle.
Well, you're also looking at a situation where I've seen this with my 2013 Model S. People would get in it and they're coming from Honda Accords or Toyota Camrys, and they're like, oh my God, this is a spaceship. You know what I mean? And so, like you were saying, like from ICE to the Ionic 5, if you've never been in a Tesla, this is going to seem like a whirlwind. It's the same thing with the ID4, which is why it was popular in the beginning. People were like, "Oh my God, this is so fast!" And it's like, is it? Because I test drove that, and it's really not. But they don't know. You know what I mean? They don't know about instant torque, and these are all things that they find out now. But that's why, like Jeff was saying about the hockey stick, like once people start to take these leaps of, you know, of faith, or just try to realize that the future is inevitable, and they do make these choices to go EV, like it's just going to become like a snowball effect with all these companies and all these vehicles. And then we're going to have a situation like how we have now with ICE. Like nobody cares if the Corolla is competing with the freaking Nissan Sentra. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big deal. So I think once we have like all EVs, you know what I mean, or we're like at a 50% market share, I think it's going to be like it's just going to be crazy.
Definitely. So Jeff, I wanted to get your thoughts on this article that was put out earlier this week. Again, you probably saw this. Sawyer put it up. Morgan Stanley's Adam Jonas thinks that the Tesla Optimus humanoid robot will initially cost between $30,000 to $60,000. So he says that he thinks that Optimus Gen 2 will be between $50,000 to $60,000, excluding software. However, with benefit of scale and introduction of AI algorithms to significantly shorten the R&D cycle and the utilization of effective components from China, we see opportunities for significant cost reduction to achieve CEO's targeted Optimus selling price of $20,000. What were your thoughts, when you saw this? Do you see this as being realistic or a lot higher, as far as the current bill? Or what were your thoughts when you saw this article this week?
Yeah, in the cost world, what companies have to deal with are development costs in the early prototyping phases, and then they're converging on a cost to production launch the product, and then they think about lifetime and terminal COGS. So I'll go through it. I talked about 4 different things there. So, but I believe this 50 to 60,000, maybe unknowingly, is at no scale, and kind of like what you would be paying. Tesla's probably paying this or more, to make the dozens of prototypes right now of Optimus, even the Gen 2. But then once because the tooling, the fabrication methods required to make small volume scale prototypes are going to be different than the production methods you would use for mass production. So this number kind of strikes me as pre-production type. I know they didn't intend it, but the 50 to 60K kind of strikes me as that. But then what Tesla will do is, once you're approaching launch, depending on kind of like how clean things are, even some of the greatest companies and product companies you see in the world have problems at launch that make their launch costs very large. Sometimes 2 times what their target is. And that would be way off, but sometimes that happens. But basically, once you approach launch, you should be very close to your cost target, and then you're utilizing components that come off of a production process. And production processes have fabrication methods that allow them to do more units over a longer lifespan, and a higher frequency number of units, and therefore that capital, that tooling, is less expensive, and then you're going to be amortizing that over a larger lifetime of units. So I said a lot there, but basically you have the prototype staging costing, which I think is what they're kind of referring to here. But once Tesla gets to launch, like I think Elon has said, he's targeting, $10,000 at scale for Optimus. And what $10,000 at scale may be, it may be several $1,000s higher at launch, and it's going to take them some period of time to work that down. And what does that mean? Work it down. What that means is every unique component in that product has two fundamental things that they're working through. One is the yield. So how many good parts come out that are input, how many good come out the other side. And the second thing is speed or velocity. And, what's the process time to make that particular component, and what's the process time then to put the whole system together. And so what Tesla will be doing over that time period is working each component up the yield curve with their supplier partners, and they'll be working down the process times to hit the target. And as they do that, the cost structure comes down because you can make more product with the same amount of capital, with the same amount of labor, but you do it faster. So Tesla, in short, I think it'll be several $1,000s higher at launch. But if Elon has put a $10,000 target on with the team, it's not a given that they're going to get the $10,000, but they're making decisions now before any production tooling has been released, before anything. They're making decisions about what goes in, what gets removed, what parts need to be combined, what parts need to be simplified. They're making those decisions now before they go out to suppliers and release like large scale tooling. And there's a way for companies that are experienced at developing product to actually project what their terminal cogs are. And if you're really good at this, and I help companies to this still to this day, you should be able to predict, kind of from your concept or development phase, you should be able to be within like 1% of that. If you're very good at doing this, and you're very mature and experienced at doing this, you should be able to get to that. But some companies struggle with that. And so that's what's happening. If you go step back and zoom out in the humanoid space, you have to ask yourself a question. Well, who of the announced kind of humanoid bot manufacturers have that experience of putting product in at mass scale of this complexity? And I believe humanoid robots are a scale up of building a complex smartphone or a complex tablet. And they're more of a scale up of that with some mechanical moving parts, which actually phones used to have a lot of before smartphones. And anyway, so I think when I look at the cast of companies that are doing humanoids, that's one thing that gives me great confidence that, number one, if you're investing in the humanoid space, I think you're safe with Tesla, just based on their abilities to produce product at mass scale of this complexity and much greater. And Tesla and Elon, under Elon's companies, he has the assets that have actually built product at this much smaller scale. A lot of difficulty comes in the miniaturization process. And when you have constraints about how a product is made or packaged, you have less constraints actually when you're building a vehicle. Well, there's constraints all over the place. But when you're trying to build something much, much smaller, the whole concept of dealing with constraints is a big challenge. So I think with Tesla, with their Starlink assets inside of SpaceX, with their material assets that they have inside of SpaceX on the metallurgy side, and then just with Tesla, with their microelectronics and their system level assembly and design, I think they have all the right assets to make, to hit Elon's target and to make humanoids at scale.
Yeah, prototypes are easy. Production's hard, as you have helped several companies ramp. It's the supply chain and the production is insanely hard. But yeah, I mean, I think again they had two robots. They're potentially ramping to 10 robots in the factory now. So it'll be more importantly is just getting them out, getting them into the actual factory, and then from there, who knows, maybe at some point we'll have humanoid ones. I think Joe and we actually got to see one that is going to be meant for like home use cases. It's called EV. I think it's 1X Tech is the company. So there actually used to be a Tesla employee. He left Tesla and went over to this company, and he's now the VP of product there. And we actually got to interact with it. It was like picking up the drinks, handing it to me, waving at me. When I told it to step back, it would step back. So it was, doing a lot of And that was just like the 2 minutes that I had with it. But they are actually, it sounds like they're looking to do a release in the next year for for home cases, and then start ramping. So it's exciting either way. I'm really excited for what Tesla will do. We know, again, it'll be extremely hard to ramp it, but they have to solve the manufacturing use case first, and then hopefully they can go from there. So one other thing, I think we have like 5 minutes, so this may be quick. Xpeng, literally the copycat of Tesla in China, their CEO, I guess, was raving about FSD on how precise and smooth the system was. So it's obviously all good, because you can copy the hardware. The software is going to be a lot harder to copy, but I thought that was interesting as well. And then I think this was the last thing I wanted to kind of end with. This literally, I think, just broke this morning. And it feels very much like what you were saying, Alexandra and Jeff, earlier, where you were saying just, people just trying to hype, kind of get the names. Again, this is all just rumors, but, everyone's talking about autonomy. And so I think you're going to just see over the next year, all of these legacy companies are literally just going to be coming out and saying, hey, look at our prototype. We're going to make it autonomous. And by 2026, this will be driving you and your kid around.
And haven't they told us now for years that hybrid is the solution and that full EV was not at all what they would like to consider because their hybrids are the best of the best?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a common practice, and I've seen this from being in tech, and I think it's borderline disgusting. But basically, Tesla is this gigantic planet. Like, think of just like the biggest planet, like Jupiter or whatever. This gigantic planet, and it has this kind of its own atmosphere and its own kind of gravitational pull. And so when Elon in April says, I'm 8.8 Robotaxi event, or Elon says, we're doing a lower cost vehicles that are coming out in the first half of next year, immediately what a lot of these companies do is they pull together and they make some renderings. That you can do a lot of stuff with rendering tools and various bits of software, and you could render something up, and basically somewhere around the Tesla announcement, they'll go out and put their announcement out, just like what we saw with this Robotaxi announcement from a company making $1 million cars today.
Well, we saw it also, real quick, Jeff. We saw it with the Cybertruck. Tesla announced that before anybody had any electric trucks out. And then all of a sudden, Ford comes out with a light bar across the front truck. And, Rivian had their thing that ended up showcasing later at an event. And it just started to snowball. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, we have a truck. We have a truck. And of course,
so what they do exactly, Joe, is they because Tesla has all this unearned media, and they have all this attention, and people know if you can write an article with Tesla and it's going to get 1,000x more clicks, and they just want to hop onto that and say, all right, if Tesla's going to get all this media attention, let's get something out there, even though we may not have the full plan together. If we get something out there and we get interest, it'll help us with getting investment. It'll help us with getting partners on advertising. It'll help us with recruiting. It'll help us with all these different things. And so they do that. And, it's, I don't know, it annoys me. That's why I brought it up. And that's, I think you're going to see a lot of that.
And gives them a feeling of belonging. And also, in every situation, there's usually one or a couple of winners and many more losers. And when losers stick together, it gives them this collective feeling of being able to catch up and being able, they entertain their currently losing position and make themselves believe that they're actually catching up. You're right. Disgusting is probably the right word. And we just have to deal with it. Again, I hope there are more EVs. I hope there are more autonomous cars. I hope there are more AI driven projects and more bots and whatever. It just doesn't make sense that these people all think they can jump on the train a couple of weeks prior to big announcements. But now we should talk about the X takeover. Come on, give it to us, John.
How did you know?
Because I know you.
How did you know? So I think we had an X Spaces yesterday. So thank you to all of you guys everyone was actually in attendance. If you don't know, the X Takeover is happening at the end of July, literally in 1 month. It's crazy. So we are now officially less than, 30 days, because it's July 27th and 28th in San Luis Obispo, California. So if you like the Tesla Beat podcast, you will see all of us in various aspects, moderating or actually on a panel discussion. So I know Jeff and Alexandra will be with their typical show called the Cyber Bulls with Herbert, and they will have a special guest, Gally from Hyperchange. So they'll be talking on Saturday. So hopefully, again, you can come and meet them in the flesh if you want to meet Alexandra or Jeff.
Lots of flash here. You can come.
Yeah, exactly. But if you didn't get to meet Alexandra or Jeff at the shareholder meeting, come and say hi. They will be there. So tons of content sessions. There's a light show, a ride and drive. Tesla will be there giving test drives, and a lot of e-mobility experiences. Huge area for kids. So if you have kids and you want them to have some fun, bring them. Over 40 exhibitors, some amazing food, and just an opportunity to meet other like-minded people, not only Tesla and EV enthusiasts, but we'll be also discussing some SpaceX as well. We have, again, Franz, chief designer of Tesla, and Jared Isaacman, American entrepreneur, pilot, and philanthropist as well. So if you have time at the end of July, come and join us. This is the largest Tesla community event in the world. And so we would love you to join us. We've put a lot of time and work into it. Joe's actually here. Let me just, Joe, you're actually wearing some swag that you'll be selling there, right?
Nope.
Okay, never mind.
This is the crew shirt.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Ignore what I just said, but go to xtakeover.com. Jeff has a lot of amazing swag. I don't have my jacket with me, but there will be swag like Joe has right now with all of the Elon companies, and it'll say Takeover. I know it'll be there'll be a hat, a sweater, and a jacket. So, and in the morning, it does get fairly windy out there. It won't be too hot, as Alexandra made very clear yesterday, but we would love to see you there. So thanks, Alexandra, for warming me into that. But thank you guys for attending, and we will see you at the end of July in person. If not, we'll see you the next time. Have a good week, everyone. Cool. Thank you, guys.